Welcome to the Tao of Pizza, where we feature top logistics leaders, entrepreneurs, and supply chain innovators and share their inspiring stories with a holistic twist.
Mark Hiddleson here, host of the Tao Pizza podcast, where I talk with top industry innovators in the warehousing, logistics, and supply chain business with a holistic twist. Before I introduce Solala Towler, this episode is sponsored by Specialized Storage Solutions. Look, I've been in the logistics and storage industry for several decades. I know I don't look that old, but it's true. We provide industry-leading warehouse storage solutions nationwide. So basically, if you have a warehouse that needs rack, shelving, carts, conveyors, or mezzanines, we help with design, engineering, installation, inspections, and repairs to help clients optimize their logistics operations. And it's funny, sometimes people don't even realize we can actually help with permit acquisition services. So we take a holistic look at your entire business supply chain and help you develop the resources to continually improve your operation. To learn more, visit our website at specialracks.com or give us a call at 732-3892. And one of the best ways to get a hold of me is my personal email, which I give to podcast listeners. It's Mark Hiddleson at AOL.com if you're ready to take your warehouse storage and retrieval systems to the next level. Now, before introducing Solala, I have to give a big thank you to Vicky Delogioio, who introduced us, and want everybody to go check out her website at www.vickydelogioio.com. Vicky is a life-changing workshop leader, Qi or energy master teacher, and inspirational speaker. Her work empowers wellness-motivated and spiritually inclined seekers to infuse body, mind, spirit practices into their very selves so they can tap into their birthright of joy. But today I'm really excited. I have Solala Towler. And Solala Towler has been studying and teaching the Daoist arts for over 30 years. He published The Empty Vessel, the Journal of Daoist Philosophy, and practiced for 25 years and has done a dozen books published by such publishers as Watkins, Singing Dragon, and Sounds True. He's a founding board member and past president of the National Qigong Association, and he teaches regular classes on Taoism, Qigong, tea ceremony, and the Dao De Jing on Zoom. Solala, welcome to the Tao Pizza.
Thank you. Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, this proved when Vicky introduced us, she said it was going to be a lot of fun, and I knew just from the email exchanges we had, it was like I'm really looking forward to this.
Yeah, I love Vicky, Vicky DeJoyo, so I call her Vicky Joy Joy. That's how I refer to her.
Yeah, and her, when I first started practicing with her 20 years ago, I just called her Joy, just the one word Joy. And she is, I just had a client I talked to this morning that listened to that podcast, and he said, I would never grow tired of listening to her voice.
Oh,
So, yeah, she's beautiful. So I wanted to ask you first how you got started on the journey of studying and teaching the Taoist arts.
Well, I'm grew up in the 60s. I was very fortunate to come of age in the 60s. It was a long time ago, but in the 60s, I got very drawn to Eastern mysticism. So yoga, meditation, Zen, there wasn't much Taoism around back then, like 1968 or 9, back in Boston where I lived. And so I kept up with all that stuff, and I was studying pretty seriously Zen Buddhism. But there was something about Zen, and it's part of the Japanese cultural overlay where it's a little rigid, physically and even spiritually in a way. And so one day I was in a bookstore in Portland, Oregon, looking through these book section. I found a book on Taoism by a fellow named Hua Ching Ni, who later has become my main teacher. And it was like, a lot of people have told me this over the years doing the magazine. They said, when I discovered Taoism, it was like coming home. And that's what it's like to me, coming home. It just made sense.
I love that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a beautiful story. And so from that, you started, because it's actually funny, One of the reasons I got in touch with Vicky lately is because I saw that she had done an interview with you,
Yeah.
and I just saw it on LinkedIn, I think. So I'm not a big social media person. I'm not on Facebook, but I check out LinkedIn for uh, that's my professional networking
Oh,
hangout.
mhm.
Especially with when things happen, we couldn't have in-person events. I was looking at other ways to connect,
Yeah.
and I thought, wow, I've seen a lot of the books that I have studied on Taoism. Uh, and it's kind of similar to you. I was actually born in 1969, which I'm kind of proud of. I've always had a passion of exploring, and for
Mhm.
me, it's and then at least it started out. I wanted to know like the scientific, like there's people who've been studying this for thousands of years. There's a science to it. There's a methodology, and so I was taking martial arts like Aikido, and then learned
Uh,
Qigong workshops where Vicky uses her martial arts practice for like communication and spiritual growth, or what she calls spiritual fitness.
yeah.
But then that actually, I interviewed her, and then she said, "Oh yeah, Solala, he's a great guy. I want to introduce you." So just a
Yeah.
neat way. I don't believe in coincidences, but
Mhm.
because it just happening at the right time.
Well, the Chinese have a term called yuan fun. Excuse me, yuan fun, Yuanfen. Yuan fun is like when you meet someone and you just have an immediately karmic connection that you recognize. And it's someone you may have known from other lives, and it's a nice idea, other than, oh, I really hit it off with that person. Like we have yuan fun together.
Young Feng. And say
Yeah.
it again.
It's Yuanfen, yuan fun.
Yen Fun. I love
Yeah.
it. Yeah. And
And
and I
another part to that story of that question you asked me,
yes.
which when I first started studying Taoism, I had been sick for 10 years with something called chronic fatigue syndrome until I was totally bedridden, had 3 children, a wife, a business. I was going to Chinese medicine school, had to drop. Well, I kept the kids and the wife, but I had to drop everything else. And Chinese herbs are what got me out of bed. And then Qigong is what cured me of a Western considered an incurable disease. Some sort of
Wow.
autoimmune disease is what they think.
Wow.
Really put me on this path. And I saw for sure it wasn't just ideas, philosophy, it was practice, it was real.
Yeah, that is such an amazing story of healing, actual physical healing, not just and it's
Yeah.
starting from a spiritual practice to heal the physical body. Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Well, you I'm a little nervous about asking, but you asked me the great question is the why is it the Tao of pizza? And I love that question. And it started out as I wanted to publish the Tao Pizza project started out as a book that I wanted to work on, and
Mm.
just kind of wanting to share some of the resources that I've learned over the way of kind of like you were talking, how to about heal through business and trauma and family issues, and just the practices that I've learned, and from different Western, Eastern. I used to say I'm a Christian with Buddhist tendencies.
Mhm.
I would revise that. I've had similar situation with you where I've studied Zen or Aikido or anything, and I started realizing, oh, this is all talking about the Tao, the Tao.
Mhm.
So the Tao. But the funny reason is there in 1975 there's a book, and it was a bestseller by Fritjof Capra called
Yeah.
Tao Physics.
Right. I know
And
that book.
originally, yeah, I wanted to write the Tao Pizza because the Tao Physics was too hard.
Oh, okay.
so, so his premise or his the subtitle was an exploration of the parallels between like Western science and Eastern mysticism.
Mhm.
And so my experience has been similar. I mean, I'm not. The thing is, he's an astrophysicist or some kind of nuclear like super quantum physicist guy, and I'm a uh, rack salesman. But I've had the same. I see the parallels. The parallels between uh, Western and Eastern philosophy. That there's a lot more similarities, and there's Aldous Huxley, who's the perennial philosophy. And so the Tao is kind of that energy, that primordial, thing that we all want to name. But then once you name it, is not the same thing as what you're trying to explain. And the pizza is that I've applied the to develop my mind, body, and spirit to serve at home, in business, and in the community. So that, it's not a perfect pizza that you can, but to understand things, you kind of have to divide it up. And so that
Uh-huh.
my pizza is mind, body, and spirit, and that I can develop myself in these three ways to be of service to my family, or I call it home. You said you used the word home, and I like
Yeah.
home because you're home. Like you're part of my home. We're uh, in home, business, and then ultimately you serve the community. So that's why it's called the Dao Pizza.
And everybody loves pizza.
And everybody loves pizza.
Yeah.
and it's not quite as serious as physics, but I do. Uh,
Yeah. But
yeah,
actually, it's very good what you're doing, because to really study Taoism is not just this sort of mystical Chinese thing. It's how can you use what you learn in all parts of your life, relationship, business, health, all the parts, so that it's not just some foreign mystical thing, but it's very real. It's very really touchable and holdable and useful.
yeah. And I want to share something with you, and I feel comfortable just because I did fill the I forgot how to say it again, but I know how to spell it. The Yon Fun,
Oh, Yuan Fun.
Yen Fun.
Yeah.
The day we set up this meeting, I knew I was researching. I thought we were going to do the podcast on that day, so I'd done
Oh,
a little bit of research, and we ended up just having a short conversation. But I read. I have your book, Inner Chapters. I'm not sure if you is one of the dozen, and I marked little pages.
I have all those.
And
Yeah.
the one that I marked a long time ago, uh, it was about some friends, and I want to change my glasses. I want to read this.
Okay.
There were four friends. I'll say the names wrong. I'm going to apologize in exact.
Doesn't matter.
I love saying the names, but it's
Yeah.
Suzu, Suyu, Suli, and Zulai.
Uh-huh.
But their basic thing is whoever they had a discussion, and they said whoever will make his non-being his head, life his backbone, and death his tailbone, who understands that life and death, existence and non-existence are the same, that man shall be our friend. And the four of them laughed in agreement, and they remained friends. And this goes on to tell about their passing on. And I knew I had read that, and I knew my father was in the last days of his life when you and I had that conversation. And I almost, when you said I feel at home, I got chills when you said that, because I had read that, and you said I'm at home.
Yeah.
And what you said about this isn't theory that we're mumbo jumbo. When it's real, you feel it, and I was able to have a really beautiful conversation with my dad that day. And
Wow.
um, we never put it in these words, but this is the kind of relationship I had with my dad. And we would we
Oh,
would often laugh like that. That's the paradox of life, is that the only way out is death, and the cycle of life, birth, and redeath. So would you mind saying something about that story, or
well, that's from a book called the Zhuangzi, which was a book written about 500 years after the Tao Te Ching. Tao Te Ching is a book that many people know. It's the most famous book of Taoism. It's actually, believe it or not, it's the second most widely translated book in the world after the Bible,
wow.
written 2,500 years ago. And it's still being read. New versions are coming out every year, and millions of people have read it. And um, the thing about the Tao Te Ching, that a little bit like I was talking about earlier, a lot of people think of Tao Te Ching as a book of statecraft or yeah, political commentary or things like that, because he talks a lot about the emperor and the state. But to Taoists, the Tao Te Ching is a manual for self-cultivation, if you know how to read it correctly. So I'll do a little commercial here for my book.
Yeah, please. Yeah.
My book is called Practicing the Tao Te Ching, 81 Steps on the Way. There's 81 chapters. Most of them are very short. And so what I've done is I'm not translating this from classical Chinese. It's my interpretation after studying this stuff for so many years. And so I have I I I am writing it from a Taoist viewpoint of how you can use these ideas for your life. And then I have a commentary to explain what it means. And then I have a practice for every chapter. Simple Qigong meditation lifestyle practice. So for 81 chapters is 81 practices. So a lot of people use this in their classes, Qigong teachers, and I've been doing a weekly class on Dao De Jing for almost 3 years now, since before COVID. A
Nice.
friend of mine helped me learn how to use Zoom. So now, Zoom is how we're connecting.
Yeah.
You know, and it's like I call the internet cyber Tao.
Oh, that's
There's a
great.
lot of that's how we're meeting, right?
Yeah,
And
it
we
is.
meet in the same place um, spiritually, heartfully, even if we're not in the same room. It's not as great as being live with people, but it's what we have, and it's been a wonderful tool for many, many people. So I do 3 classes a week on Dao De Jing, so on Qigong and Taoism. So Dao De Jing, written 2,500 years ago, Zhuangzi 500 years later. What's interesting, I love Zhuangzi because Zhuangzi's book, you have the book, it's mostly stories
Hmm.
and really paradoxical, ridiculous stories like the one you just referred to.
Yeah.
Where Lao Tzu is more kind of calm, the wise teacher. And Zhuangzi is, okay, how do we get out of the box? The box that society, religion, culture, our parents, our education system puts us in. How do we break out of that box to be free people? There's a term in Taoism called Zhenren, which is their idea of like a self-realized person. Zhenren means authentic person. You'll see it sometimes translated as the true man or the perfect man, but what it actually means is authentic person, meaning who are you authentically? Most people have no idea.
Yeah.
Find out, discover who you are, your authentic self, and then express that to the world.
And that's exactly what my dad told me when he was studying psychology in Berkeley in the 60s, actually.
Wow.
So during the same time.
Oh,
And he said he changed from Spanish to psychology because he wanted to become, and the words he used were a real person.
oh, really?
But I would call authentic and real, I would use the word whole person, but whole person even kind of is confusing. But like you're an authentic is the word I love.
Uh,
And finding out, and he just said it was a lot harder. It took him, he said it was really the last 10 years of his life
oh,
that he, kind of figured out. And I asked him what he meant by a spiritual relationship because he told me of his sister and one of my cousins, his niece, that he had a spiritual relationship with.
mm,
And I said, what did you mean by that? And what he meant by that was I could share anything without shame or guilt.
mhm,
And he said, it's like the relationship I have with you. And
yeah,
so, it was really, I just love that happened. I don't believe in coincidences. So again, the fact that I talked to you, you
yeah.
said that, and the other thing is one of the prayers that my dad is having my youngest son read is paradox of prayer.
Huh.
So it's when you ask for strength, you get weakness. But uh,
Oh, oh,
and then another coincidence happened is our pastor this week. He gave a sermon on the kingdom paradoxes, and in the way he listed them is the last will be first, the least will become the greatest, the weak become strong, the foolish confound the wise. I love that one. Those who give it all away end up with the most. Those who hang on to everything lose what they had. And those who lose their life, which really meaning ego for the sake of the group, find their life. And if you want to be the greatest in the kingdom, you must become the servant of all. And to me, that strikes my heart exactly the same way. The Taoist, is that
oh,
your?
too. If you want to become strong first weekend, he has a whole chapter on that exact thing.
So
Yeah.
I love that we're connected. I love that we're connected at this time. Um, and if there's another one is so that uh, the Taijutsu symbol. That's another reason it's called the Tao of pizzas because I've loved the
Hi,
Taijutsu.
Jason. Yeah.
And I always say yin and yang. because I feel like if I say yang, how do you pronounce it? Is it yin and yang or yang?
Yeah.
Yang.
Yeah.
I know it's yang. I always say yang because it's just kind of the popular
Yeah.
vernacular and people. And I know you like the pronunciation to be what it is, and I think that's important too. And then also, I know if people call it the Tao of pizza, I know that they haven't listened to one
Oh,
episode.
of course. If you didn't know, you would of course say T. It's because Chinese is a pictorial language. It's characters. And when they were trying to see how can we put these characters in the Western alphabet, they came up with this system called Wade Giles, which is very problematic because for some reason Dao they spell with a T. And of course, if you didn't know it, you would assume it's Tao Te Ching. It's actually pronounced Dao De Jing. And we were talking earlier, the duh, which most people translate it as virtue, that's part of it, but it also means spiritual power, spiritual potency, someone who has a lot of spiritual energy. Whatever religion they're in, whatever spiritual path, people that are high level spiritual people, you can feel their spiritual energy. It's a strength that they've created or developed through sometimes very, very challenging times.
Yeah, yeah. And I'm going through one of those challenging times, and I'm
Mm,
glad that I have the
mm,
the support system, the practices, the people, the relationships around me, and then this practice really. Um,
yeah.
so I also wanted to talk to you about uh, another story. I think it's in the same. It's and I've been pronouncing the author of the inner chapters wrong. How do you
Well, very few people in the West know it, but it's drunk.
drunks? So it's drunk, almost like drunk, like
Like, yeah, yeah, like a J.
drunks.
Tzu. Now the same thing in the author of this book, Lao Tzu. Tzu is not actually his name. He isn't Mr. Tzu. It's like it's a title. It means master. And the one who wrote this book, Lao Tzu, is called the Old Master. But also very interesting, the character Tzu can also mean child.
Child.
Sometimes you'll see it translated as the old child or the old boy or becoming a child to enter the kingdom, bring the children to me, there's a lot of those kinds of things.
Yeah, I
And
actually just the podcast that came out this week was I've been doing this series on archetypes, and
mm,
I was actually going to talk to you about this. The child is an archetype,
mhm.
and I was thinking about this and having this conversation with you. It was like, well, archetypes are super Western, and it's like Greek mythology. But then I was thinking about it, and the Tao. It's also, I think of it as the natural way or the way of nature.
Oh
All
yeah.
of those archetypes show up in nature. Like the child, that's nature. That's we've just named it in the West as child with that energy. And my dad, in the same, my last conversation with my dad, we talked about the distinction between being childlike and childish.
Yeah, that's an important thing to make clear. People don't need to be childish. There are people that are great artists and they're really brutal to everyone they're around or their relationships. And people would give them all that leeway because they're an artist
Yeah.
or so-called spiritual teachers that abuse their students. Well, they're enlightened. They know better than I do. This seems fishy to me, but what do I know? I'm just a student. All that stuff is really crap bullshit, really.
Yeah. Yeah. And I just kind of rolled the dice to talk about 9 archetypes that I really identify with, like the clown, the knight in shining armor, Don Juan. But child is one that we all have, and it came up under business. Like, how did childs relate? And a lot of my business, the way I've had some success is by finding mentors who are almost like father figures, where I'm really curious about things and not being a know-it-all, of just trying to say, "Hey, teach me." And then some people have taught me some amazing things that I could have never learned on my own by just kind of being childlike
Yeah.
and curious.
Well, one of the main principles of Taoism is it's called the wisdom of foolishness.
I, I love that. Say more about that.
The
There's
wisdom you see a lot of that in Zhuangzi. Even in Lao Tzu, there's one of my favorite chapters is chapter 20. and he's describing himself, or a person describing themselves, as they're looking around the world and everybody seems to know what they're doing. They all seem to have it together. They're all, chasing that dream, and I'm sitting off in the corner and they look at me like they think of me as stupid or childish or, but he says the last two lines are, but I am different from these others because I am nourished by the Great Mother.
That's one of the chapters I have marked in here.
Oh, really? Yeah, that's one of my favorites.
Well, because then you go with another one of mine is the 25th chapter, which talks about the chaos and the well, actually that's different. Um, but yeah, I was looking at that one that other people have more than enough. I alone seem to have lost everything. I'm foolish. Other people are clear while I'm confused. Yeah.
Or their rat race is going on, but I'm not a part of it. And so they look at me like I'm dull, stupid. But I'm different from those others. He's connected to source with a capital S, which is a
Yeah.
word I a lot in my book for Tao. It's the source, all the mystic paths, right? All the mystic quest is about how to become one with source, whether it's God, Allah, Tao, Buddha, and people do prayer, contemplation, Qigong, Tai Chi, yoga, all these things that help these people get back to that source that we all know we came from. We may have lost our connection. And people feel like there's something missing in my life. I have a great house, I have a great relationship, I'm doing well in business, but there's something missing. What is that that's missing? What missing is that connection to source. And there's a lot of tools we have to discover that.
Yeah. And so tell us, share a little bit about your like, were there turning points in teaching and publishing a dozen books? It's funny. Well, after working on one, I know that with all the research that I've done enough research to do 12 or
Oh,
enough
yeah.
ideas.
Right.
Tell me about that journey. The first, maybe just the first, going from research to publishing. Like, what was that journey like?
Well, I had good, I published a few myself, and then I've worked with really great. I've worked with three British publishers actually. For some reason, I had some yuan fun with these British publishers.
Even fun,
Like
yeah.
Watkins. I have a book, this one called Tales from the Tao, and these are 2,000-year-old stories from the Taoist tradition that I'm like retelling. Some of them are only like 2 paragraphs long. So I'm retelling it. And this book is very artistic because they have these great nature photographs that are printed in black and silver on glossy paper.
I
So they're like
love that.
three-dimensional. And I've done 3 books with these guys, one of Zen stories also.
Who's the publisher on that one? Solala?
Watkins, they're called Watkins.
Oh, Watkins is the one that did the inner chapters too.
Yeah, they're the oldest esoteric publishing house in England, started in the 1800s.
Wow.
And I've done 2 books with what sounds true, who are also great people to work with. Their main office is in Colorado, and the 2 times I've been out to visit them, one year I went out and taught a Qigong class to the people who work there. Another time I went out and did a tea ceremony for the people who work there. So they're very open-minded people.
Yeah.
And tea is something a lot of people don't realize, that if you go to Daoist temples in China, part of what I do is take groups to China to go up in the mountains and study with Taoist masters. And people, it's called Kung Fu tea ceremony. It's another one of those words that's spelled wacky, Kung, Fu, Kung Fu, people. Of course,
Yeah.
it's pronounced Kung Fu. And actually, there is a new system called the Pinyin system where, for instance, this would be spelled Dao. But my publisher said, well, people are used to seeing it with a T, or it might confuse people. So some of my publishers let me use the D and some don't. But tea ceremony, using tea as a meditation, tea is a metaphor for life, slowing down, following what in Taoism we call the water course way, going with the flow, manzo, going slowly. We drink these interesting teas called pu'er tea, which is like a fermented tea that comes in a hard brick that you have to break up to do the tea. And there's certain little things that we do. It's not in Japan, they have a Zen tea ceremony that's very long and very formal. But the Chinese, Chinese are just a little more easygoing culturally than the Japanese. So the tea ceremony is a lot more fun. I'm doing a public one on Sunday for a whole group of people. And I've
Nice.
done them to like 80 people at a time.
What kind of group do you anticipate this weekend?
A friend of mine who's a Qigong teacher and a Daoist, he's bringing a bunch of his like martial arts friends.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
And
And I did one at the NQA, the National Qigong Association, the last conference they had in person to like 80 people.
that's awesome.
We
And
had little paper cups that we
yeah.
passed around. And everybody has their tea, and there's little things you do to connect to the three treasures of Jing, Qi, and Shen. And you're doing it as meditation. And like I have this other book called Tea Mind, Tea Heart, which is poems, stories, articles about tea and tea mind and Taoist. There's also one on Tibetan on it when I went to Tibet, the tea ceremony there also. So it's part of our practice. Because Taoism, that Lao Tzu says a lot, get out of your head and into your belly.
Mm-hmm.
Let go of your intellectual mind, especially people in the West, people who are considered really, other than being, like a rock star or something, people are very educated, they have a lot of degrees, they're very intellectually developed, but emotionally, they're often really messed up, and physically also. So Taoism is about not only do we want to have a clear mind, we want to have balanced emotions, and we want to have strong qi, strong life force.
Yeah.
So it's not just meditating all the time or studying books all the time. We do those also, but also we work with our vital force and connect it with the vital force of the universe.
It is.
Very unique that way.
It really is. And when I first I I got lucky. I don't believe in luck either. I chose to study uh in 2001. The economy was doing some weird things. I'd just gotten out of college and graduated, and I was Mr. I forget what you call it, but I was in the rat race, and it
Yeah,
felt like I was winning.
yeah,
Like,
yeah. That's
I'd had spent a lot of time in my education practicing. I've always had a mind, body, spirit approach to life, and things were going well. But then when the economy really took a hit, really everybody was hit, and then it was a shock to my system that
mhm.
all this, I would call it striving or thriving. There's this underlying thing. If everything's tied to economic stuff, that stuff's all slippery. And I wanted to go back to school because I knew education was something that I could, rely on to teach. Whether the economy goes up or down, you can build value, develop yourself. And so I was thinking about getting like an MBA in finance or something, but
Oh,
something hit me very strongly, and it was a voice. And I do hear voices, I don't hear it all the time, but it was a
that's perfectly reasonable.
definitely a voice that said, study the mind body problem, because that was one of the last things I did in my undergraduate. I had to take some classes. I already had everything I needed for economics. So it was like, take two things of anything. And I took metaphysics and nutrition, which you think like, well, those two things are two
Oh,
different things. But for
not
me,
necessarily.
yeah, since I was taking it together and connecting the dots, and I was thinking, yeah, well, this mind body is thing that nobody's figured it out. Like in philosophy, that's kind of like the first verse of the Dao De Ching, that De Jing,
Yeah,
that you once you put something into words or concepts or philosophies, you're not really describing reality, and
yeah, the real reality.
the
It's
real
put it in a
reality.
box. Then you've got it in a box. And okay, I know what it is because it's in this box. And so it's the same thing to everyone, but everyone has a different relationship to source.
Yeah.
No matter what religion there are, or just their own personal, inclination, they have a different feeling.
And I started getting away from the rat race. And the interesting thing that happened, and my boss, when I told him, I was a commissioned salesperson, and he said, "Oh, when you start doing your master's degree, your sales are going to go down
Oh,
40%."
yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
what ended up happening is they ended up doubling, because I was nourishing this source. Relationships were coming easier. Things were, the non-force was starting to fill this energy. I had more energy. I wasn't as tired. I wasn't, and I was spending extra time, or I would say I was investing time, but it was in classes with people like Vicky. I did a
Wonderful.
5-day retreat, and there were other teachers. Wendy Palmer teaches Aikido.
Oh,
And
okay. I
so,
don't know her.
but immediately as I started to move and do, learn about nature and our bodies, I just, like you said, it was home. It's like,
Yeah,
and you can
yeah,
feel it. You
yeah.
feel,
Can I share a short poem with you
I would
about
love
the
to.
tea? This
I,
is about the tea thing.
I would love to hear about the tea.
Okay. So it's here it is, chapter 744. And it's called Every Tea Should Be a Time of Celebration. So
Hmm.
every tea means tea ceremony or just getting together with friends. When we drink tea, which in Chinese is called pin ming, there's a phrase in Chinese, and I've got the Chinese in here, but it's called Pin Ming Lun Dao, which means savor tea, discuss Dao. Savor, not just glugging tea, but really savoring it. And that it could be Pin Ming drinking coffee, just wine, something that you're really slowing down and savoring. Discuss Dao can be having high philosophical talks or just sharing from your heart what's going on in your life. So that's one of the things we keep in mind with the whole tea ceremony thing. When we drink tea, we celebrate the magical transformation of leaf and water contained in the cup or bowl from which we drink. The tea leaves that appear so dead and dry, when paired with hot water, become transformed from dry, dead leaf to a living liqueur, connecting the drinker with the land that the tea or bush grew from, the hands that picked the buds or leaves and processed them, a hard labor. The seller of the tea brings the tea to us, our own hands and mouth touching the tea, our spirits becoming calm and centered as we drink the magical brew.
Mhm.
So it is that we celebrate this coming together of hand and heart, of land and leaf, of sunlight and moonlight, and our own sweet selves. We give thanks and praises for the opportunity and the blessing of sharing ourselves with the ancient magic of water, earth, and sunlight, so bright, so life giving. We celebrate the coming together of all these things, these gifts given freely of the earth and the sky. In this way, every tea becomes a celebration of gratitude and grace.
Oh, thank you. That is awesome. Is that in the tea
That's in the
ceremony
Sacred Mind Tea part.
book? And we're gonna have links to all your
Okay.
books in the show notes. That is so
Yes. And I have these
beautiful.
great 50 color photographs of tea in nature, a cup of tea with a leaf that just fell into it at the moment I was
Wow.
taking the photo. So it has a lot of things like that in it. Because it's like I said, it's not just drinking a beverage, it's really sharing something with people.
Yeah, and what we call tea in our family is it's the good rumors. Like that's a popular thing of saying share the tea, which is saying share the
Oh,
good. Like, did you hear anything
yes.
good? I mean,
Oh,
it can kind of
nice.
be in a negative. I practice a habit of not gossiping, but it's
Mhm.
you're actually saying in a positive way, like let's share the things that are making us more whole or more connected
Yeah,
to the earth
yeah,
and the sun and nature. And do you take are they your photographs or do
yeah,
you?
these are all my photographs. Yeah. So you see the
Wow.
tea is very dark, this tea that we
Yeah.
drink for tea. So I have things in here, how to do a tea ceremony, what is pu'er about, and there's stories from and just photographs of all my teacups,
I
which
love that.
in Kung Fu tea, we use little bitty teapots and little bitty cups. So, and we drink it very slowly.
Nice. So
Yeah.
you're savoring. Yeah.
Yeah.
I live in the wine country
Oh,
and the a lot of the imagery in the way that it's produced in you can taste. I always thought it was BS that you could taste the difference between the dirt and the microclimate, but it's
oh
amazing you
yeah.
can.
Yeah.
And the ones who are farmers, they put a lot of their farmers put a lot of their energy into you know So what we're receiving is a gift really from the farmer,
Yeah.
the sun, the earth.
Every wine tasting should be a celebration.
Yeah.
And there is a tea, there's a kind of tea, pu'er tea that's naturally fermented like a wine. They make the tea, they process it, and then they put it on a shelf like wine for 10, 20, even 30 years, and then you would drink it. And it's unbelievably expensive, just like really old wine.
Yeah.
But there's also a kind of pu'er tea where they fast track it so that you don't have to wait so long and it's not so expensive. So my partner and I drink tea together every day, and we're lately I've been gathering rainwater to make the tea from because it's been
Nice.
raining here a lot in Oregon. It was really dry summer, lots of fires, and now it's raining like every single day for weeks.
That is
Yeah.
that's what it is in Oregon. I've noticed. I was riding the train. My daughter's going to school in Corvallis, and I was
Oh,
riding the train from Portland, and it kind of goes along. There's a river, but there's a lot of creek beds. And at the
oh yeah,
same time in California, all those creek beds were empty or really small. But in Oregon, they're flowing.
yeah,
Oregon
yeah.
has water.
Well, I think you mentioned your daughter's going to school in Corvallis. So next time you go to visit her, Eugene is like an hour away. Come and have tea. We have a tea room. We'll do the whole tea thing for you.
I mentioned that to my wife, and my wife
Yeah.
is we're definitely um we're actually driving up there this weekend. I don't know if
Oh,
it's gonna be this weekend, but it's
yeah.
planned this weekend. We're driving our
Oh,
motorhome
I
up
see.
there. Yeah, we're gonna camp out at the local Walmart with the rest of the people camping in California.
At a Walmart, like in a parking lot at
No,
Walmart.
I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding about
Oh,
the
oh,
Walmart.
oh, I see.
You do
Yeah.
see these days. You see
Well,
people.
people are living in all kinds of places. Right.
It's one
Right.
of the
Yeah.
interesting things that's happening right now.
Very sad.
It's sad. Yeah. Uh, I
But
I wanted.
Vicky is a great, you mentioned her, you had her on earlier,
Mhm.
and Taoism is about being authentic, but also being joyful. Lao Tzu says if we didn't laugh, it wouldn't be Tao. And she's a great person because she's very heartful and brings a lot of joy into it. And if you're just gonna, oh, we're gonna do Qigong and talk about the Tao, it's just, there's something missing when you promote, and there are some very famous Qigong teachers. I won't name names, and they're very serious about it and very formal, and you just don't get that spark.
Yeah, the energy and the joy. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, so one of the things I want to ask you about is, for a while I was looking for, what are the, because every practice there's like 8 tenets or 8, principles, and I
Huh.
kind of
Yeah.
knew about the tension between opposites and the taijutsu and non-force or go with the flow. That's some of the ones I could just name.
Yep.
But you have you're one of the only people I've seen who you kind of have a list of principles
Mm.
of Taoism. Would you mind just kind of sharing
Yeah. Well, one that you mentioned, probably the most important one is called Wu Wei. And of course, it's spelled Wuwei. So of course you would think it's Wu Wei, but it's
okay.
pronounced Wu Wei. Of course, not a problem. Um, means no, not well. It directly translated means not doing, but it means not overdoing, not overextending, not pushing the river, not forcing something to happen. The
Yeah,
idea is that we just create something. We create the environment for something good to come out of it, and we're not forcing our opinion on other people, or we're not forcing ourselves. I need to meditate 8 hours a day. I'm never going to become enlightened, or that thing of when you're in a good cycle, everything's going well. Realize that at some point that's going to turn because we all go through cycles, high and low. So when you're high cycle, don't overextend. Don't spend all your money. Don't take on too many projects, and realize that eventually you're going to be in a low state. When you're in a low cycle, don't give up hope and get miserable and depressed. Remember that is also going to shift. That's the yin yang is always shifting.
yeah,
Book of Changes, the I Ching, that is another book we use in Taoism that's like 4,000 years old. So and the idea that I mentioned earlier, manzo, going slowly, eating slowly, listening slowly, moving slowly, um, and the water course way, which is going with the flow, and also being like there's a famous interview with Bruce Lee, the great martial artist, who also studied Taoism. One of his books is called the Tao of Jeet Kune Do. And he's being interviewed by this Westerner, and he's talking about the adaptability of water. You put it in a round container, it becomes round. Put it in a square container, it's square. And the famous line he's saying, be like water, my friend.
Yeah.
But the idea that depending what situation we're in, we may not have chosen that situation, but can we be adaptable a little bit? Can we at least be a little comfortable or find a way that we can work with that situation? The water course way.
And I've also heard on water course, I would like to ask you this is just to ask for you to weigh in on this. I've also heard water can shape things. It's kind of a
Yeah,
non-force way,
right.
but water ultimately shapes stone. You'd think that stone is a strong material, but the water just slowly shapes.
Yeah. Like we get the Grand Canyon.
Exactly. So water took the shape of something, but then it created a shape.
Yeah, yeah. Water is, you can stick your hand in water. It's soft.
Yeah.
Yeah, it can wear down stone. Or, when it's a tsunami, it can destroy whole, houses and villages and islands. It has a power. People who are surfers, it's like a practice they're doing of balance, and it's like a Qigong practice. I've never surfed. I always wanted in my next life to be a beach blonde surfer guy in Southern California. I'm from New England, Roman Catholic New England, depressed people, but going with the wave, right? You're not forcing the wave to go with you. You're going with the wave and keeping a balance on there, and it becomes like a beautiful dance.
Yeah. It
People
is a
can do
dance.
that with your life. Surf through your life like you're a beautiful Hawaiian surfer.
That was my first goal too, was to be, and I actually tried to surf, and I actually can. I've done the last, whenever stand-up paddleboarding came out, I started doing
Oh,
that, and for the
mhm.
same reasons, because the other thing is it's beautiful, and you can catch a wave, and it is the energy. It's like all the energy it takes you to get out into the water. I remember times like
Right.
I didn't even want to put on my wetsuit, and we were all approaching our 40s, and my
Work.
buddies, yeah, we got our wetsuits
Yeah.
on. My buddy was like, "Man, I need to take a break."
Yeah. Yeah.
But you do all this work to get out. And the other thing I love about it is you're not going to win against the ocean. Like I'm a very strong swimmer, but
Mm.
there's times in the ocean you just have to relax or you're going to hurt yourself or. So that is it's a great, and I love there's Taoist art of the wave. There's waves. Is that a famous image or do
Well,
people?
there's a famous Japanese woodcut print of the wave, the Great
Uh,
Wave.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So I
I
love.
mean, my main Taoist teacher, Hua Ching Ni, he's 100, either 2 or 104 right now. And one of his books, he said, I can describe the perfect Taoist lifestyle in 3 words. Take it easy. That's sort of that surfer thing of, we're just following the waves. We're taking it easy. We're not trying to figure it out with our brain. You have to feel the wave. Is this the right wave you should take, or is it not the right wave? It may look pretty good, but you can see it's breaking in the wrong place. It's not going to take you where you want to go, or it may even drown you.
Yeah,
So that being sensitive, that way of the wave. Here, I just thought of this, the way of the wave.
yeah,
You have to work a little bit to get out there. But then
right.
once you're out there, you relax and then you use your intuition, your experience of being on waves. You can tell what's a good one to catch. And then you just get out there and the wave just carries you.
Yeah.
And
And
people can live their life that way.
yeah, another one of the only other authors I've had a couple authors besides you and Vicky on Srini Rao, another episode. He wrote a book called The Unmistakable Creative Why Being the Only is Better Than Being the Best. And each chapter,
Only instead of being the best.
being the only is
Say
better
it.
than being the best. So
Ah,
kind of back to the authenticity thing. It's
mhm.
it's better to be your own true self. And he
Yeah.
uses the surfing metaphors each chapter. So the first
Oh,
chapter,
yeah.
paddle out, and the lineup, and the drop,
Oh,
the impact zone. Because the other thing about surfing is you can wipe out really hard.
Yeah. Oh
And
yeah, people get
and so
killed,
yeah,
crippled, you know. Yeah.
and so his chapters were all, uh, which I always thought was a cool way to outline a book or describe a process is everything has the paddle out, and the lineup wherever, the better surfers get the better waves, and you don't,
Yeah. Yeah. Because they're more experienced
and
too, and they put
yeah,
in the time to
yeah,
learn it. I have a friend who has a whole Taoist book on motorcycles. It's called The Tao of the Ride.
nice.
Yeah. He's
He's
a
got a
cool guy.
book.
Yeah, Vicky knows him too. Francesco Gattapoli, his name.
I almost called my book that because it is like a ride.
Oh,
You
yeah.
and it's I got frustrated because people were talking about curves, and there was a book I read. It's a really good book called Strength to Strength, but he was talking about jumping from your fluid intelligence curve to your crystallized intelligence curve. But
Hmm.
it was like jumping curves. I don't know. I just didn't like the metaphor. You know, how sometimes
Yeah.
something is
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
why are we
Too
always talking
sweet.
about flatten a curve, jump a curve? Like this stuff
Yeah.
doesn't mean anything.
Yeah.
But the ride, the wave,
Yeah.
that is like something you find in nature. You find that.
Oh, yeah. I always believe nature is the greatest teacher, better than any book, any workshop you can do. Nature, follow nature. They were living in an agrarian society. They were looking at nature. They were watching the seasons change. They were watching animals. If animals got sick or injured, what plants did they go eat? Well, maybe we should try those plants. We should try a different combination of plants. The guy named Shen Nung, who created all the Chinese herbal formulas that are still used today, thousands of years ago, he poisoned himself many times trying different herbs, and then he would have to come up with an antidote. So he learned. This is how he learned. He didn't just read a book about herbs. He actually went out and gave his life to it, and people still use those formulas today.
Oh,
Yeah.
Solala, that's such a
Yeah.
beautiful. I was laughing because I was thinking all the times I've taken poison in my life and I've had
Yeah.
to learn my lesson.
Yeah, it can be
Like,
emotional poison, intellectual poison, physical poison. Yeah, there's a lot of ways that people take in poison. Um,
so yeah, yeah. Like one of my favorite sayings is resentment is like taking poison and hoping somebody else dies. So
oh,
any
mhm.
resentment that you have, it's really
Yeah,
not hurting whoever the resentment's toward. It's hurting yourself.
yeah.
So we only have a few more minutes, and
Oh, wow, that went by fast.
it went by so fast. I already want to do this again because I had other stuff.
Sure.
But can you tell us how to connect with your work? I love the tea
Uh,
ceremony, definitely.
yeah.
Um,
Probably just go to my website.
so
My
your
website.
website, we'll have that's Abode
Yeah.
Dao,
Yep.
and we'll have a
.com.
link to it because you spell it with the D, right? It's Abode,
TAO.
ABODETAL. So that
I
is
spell
TA.
it T because I started that website like 30 years ago. So
Okay, I
uh,
love it.
my classes are on there. I do a weekly class. We do the practices through the Dao De Jing. And I have another class I called Free and Easy Wandering, which is this Drunks, a guy that you like. His the he said the more ideal lifestyle of a Taoist, he called it free and easy wandering. That should be your lifestyle, what you're how you're living your life. So I have a class where we go more into the Jungsun stuff. And then I work with a company called Insight Timer. I don't know if you know them.
I haven't. Yeah.
It's a meditation app that's international. And I do classes on there with sometimes like 150 people from all over the world. And it's a free app, Insight Timer. It's kind of a funny name, but
Yeah.
it's a meditation app. And they have literally 500,000 people every day logging onto that site. And you can download it for free. And I have a lot, there are thousands of teachers, literally. I have at least 12 free guided meditations, my meditation music. Record with big Tibetan bowls and flutes and things. People can access all that for free. And there's many teachers. It's a really amazing resource for people, especially now that the world has been shut down. How can we get on a cyber DAO and share with each other?
This,
You know, we talked about in the pandemic about having your pod, right? Your group that
yeah,
you felt safe with. And so what we're doing when we get together like this and as groups, we're creating a pod in CyberDAO that we feel safe with, that we want to share with, that we want to enjoy our time with.
yeah. Yeah, and this is beautiful. I was uh, a late adopter because I thought there's no way, because I've done these in person. I mean, I've been moved, touched, moved, inspired in
Mm,
person, and it's like it has to be in person. And I've taken a few, what I would call, classes on transformation or spiritual fitness or however you name that, and thinking there's no way. And it's amazing because there's some trade-offs of being able, more
yeah,
people can join, more people feel comfortable to share their authentic self because you're not right there. So there's some
yeah,
trade-offs that it's
yeah,
been really nice.
yeah,
And then you can have more connections. I mean, you and I can
yeah,
connect like this as
yeah,
if we're in the same room, and yet we're in different
yeah. But we're in
different
Cyber DAO together.
cyber Tao.
Yeah.
So is there anything else you want to share? I mean, this has just been an absolute blast. I've had some fun. I've learned, and I'm gonna
Yeah.
keep learning. I love the pronunciation because I want to say it right. I'm like
Yeah.
you. And so if you
Yeah.
get a text in the middle
Oh,
of
yeah,
that,
yeah.
you're like, how
Yeah,
do
the
you
new system the new system is called Pinyin, P-I-N-Y-I-N, and
ping
they
in?
spell most things the way they're pronounced. There are still little problems like the word Qigong spelled with a Q, which is a little problematic. And of course, people would call me and say, "What is Qigong?"
Yeah,
Because of course you wouldn't if you didn't know already.
I like to spell it Chee. Because even if you
Yeah,
spell
Qi.
Chi, it still could be
Yeah,
a little confusing. But if you say Chi, like, oh, I've heard of that.
a
I've
lot
never,
of people have.
yeah,
Qigong means working with or playing with Qi.
which is another word for energy. Or
Yeah, vital. Everything that is alive has chi, not just people, animals, plants, rivers, oceans, trees, stars. There's universal chi. Everything that is alive, that we live in a world of chi, which is why qigong is like, how can we access some of that chi, and how can we circulate that in our body, and then how can we store some of it, like in our lower dantian, for instance. So
awesome.
this is just how to open yourself to having access to the wisdom. The chi has a kind of intelligence about it also, that it can work on us for what we need. People are ill, people have health problems, whether it's physical health, emotional health, psychological health problems. It works on all those levels. It's a beautiful gift that Taoism has given the world.
It really is.
And how to access it and play with it.
Play.
Yeah,
Be childlike and play with it.
yeah,
Yeah.
right.
Well, we're going to be checking out more of your stuff. Again, we'll have
Okay,
all of
great,
this in our show notes so that more people
great.
can connect. I hope the people, I mean, I'm going to reach out to, people in person, and
Mm,
I think this is great. I appreciate your work. Your books have added a lot to my life already. And then, um, I've wanted to reach out to you before, but I feel a lot better about this because this we can share. If
yeah,
there's just conversation, we'll reach out. But I think people are going to get a lot out of this conversation.
great.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, this has been a pleasure.
Okay, well, thanks for inviting me and hosting me.
Thanks for listening to the Tao of Pizza podcast. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.